He forced his pregnant wife to sign divorce papers while she was in labor, mocked her, abandoned her, and built an empire alone. But years later, one mysterious letter, a forgotten friend, and a little boy's innocent question unravel a shocking truth he never saw coming. What was hidden in her final will change everything. Stay with me till the end. This story will break you, rebuild you, and leave you speechless. Before we begin this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tap the bell icon so you never miss our powerful, life-changing content. Like and share to help our community grow. These stories are not just entertainment. They carry meaningful moral lessons designed to inspire, uplift, and transform lives. He mocked poor wife as he forced her signing divorce papers in labor, unaware of the will. I was not always a billionaire.
I was a scared boy once. Hungry.
Angry. Desperate to be someone. Anyone but my father. He drank away every coin. My mother bled in silence.
By 16, I had sworn
I would never beg. Never feel small again. Never let a woman look at me the way my mother looked at him. But in chasing that promise, I became something worse.
Her name was Asiya. She was radiant. Soft hands. Gentle voice.
She had nothing. But she gave everything. She believed in me when I was living in a broken room above a mechanic's garage. She brought me roti when I skipped meals. She stitched my only coat before an investor meeting. She smiled through every insult I brought home from the world. And I let ambition turn me into someone she would not recognize. We married in a tiny court, no guests. I promised her the world. Then I gave her silence.
Late nights. Missed calls. Missed birthdays.
By the time she was pregnant, I had made my first million.
And I thought
she was holding me back. She wore the same clothes.
Still cooked by hand.
Still smiled at me with love I no longer deserved.
And I hated it.
Because it reminded me of who I used to be. I started staying out. Told myself I was building our future. In truth, I was escaping her love.
Then one night, she went into labor.
I was not with her.
I was with a client.
Or maybe it was just a woman who looked expensive and called me sir. Asiya called from the hospital.
She sounded weak.
But I told her I was busy.
She cried.
She said, please, at least come sign the forms. I am scared. I arrived late.
She was pale. Sweaty. In pain. And I did something
I can never forgive myself for.
I brought divorce papers. In her labor bed.
While she was hooked to oxygen.
Sign it, I said. Cold. Efficient. Inhuman. I have moved on, I added.
I will take care of the child's expenses, but I want no ties with you.
She stared at me. Not with hate.
But with the sadness of someone who saw me vanish. Long before I arrived. She said nothing.
She just signed.
One trembling signature.
And turned her head away.
I left the hospital.
2 years passed.
I never saw my son. I convinced myself she was the past. I made my 3rd billion. Bought a glass tower with my name on it. Hosted charity galas I never attended. Dated actresses I could not even remember by morning.
And then one day, a letter arrived. No return address. Old paper. Familiar handwriting. Asiya. She had died. My chest burned.
I read the words over and over until my hands trembled. She had left me something. But it was not money. Not anger. Not revenge. It was a letter. Inside were photos.
Of a little boy. My son. He had my eyes. Her smile.
The letter read. I told him his father was building the world for him. I told him his father was strong, kind, and full of love. I lied, so he would not grow up with pain in his heart.
I dropped to my knees.
She had protected me. Even when I destroyed her. Even when I mocked her worth. Even when I threw her love away like trash. And at the bottom of the envelope,
there was a will.
She had bought shares in my company when I first started. Quietly. Anonymously. Every small saving she had ever made. Those shares had grown. They were now worth over $90 million. She had left them to our son.
But there was a condition. I must meet him, hold him, look him in the eye, and tell him the truth.
Only then, the transfer would complete.
I could not breathe.
I had spent a lifetime building an empire. And the woman I cast aside had built a legacy. I walked into the orphanage. My hands shook. A small boy ran across the hallway.
Curly hair, soft cheeks. He stopped, looked up at me, and said,
"Are you my daddy?"
I froze. My mouth opened,
but no sound came out.
His eyes, they were mine, unmistakably, and yet
they were filled with something I had lost long ago.
Innocence. Hope. He took a step closer, then another.
He did not hesitate. He did not fear me. "I waited," he said. "Mom said you were coming." My knees gave way. I crouched down, tears blurring my vision. I am so sorry," was all I could say.
He reached out,
wiped my cheek with his tiny hand.
"It's okay," he whispered.
"She said you were just busy making magic."
My heart cracked.
I had broken this boy's world before I ever stepped into it. And yet here he was, forgiving me. "Can I show you my drawings?" he asked, as if we had always known each other. He grabbed my hand. So small, so warm, so trusting. He led me to a corner of the room. A wall full of crayon drawings. Stick figures.
One tall, one small, holding hands, under a crooked sun.
"This is me and my dad," he said proudly. "I draw it every day, so I do not forget what it will feel like." I turned away. I could not let him see me break. But he came closer, wrapped his arms around my leg, and whispered, "I missed you." That moment, it destroyed me, and rebuilt me. I stayed. I read him stories. He fell asleep in my lap. And for the first time in years, I felt alive, whole, worthy. But the past does not let go that easily. When I tried to take him home, they refused. The orphanage director called in a lawyer. "You abandoned your wife during childbirth," she said coldly. "There are legal proceedings. Guardianship is not automatic." I wanted to scream, to protest. But she was right. I had not just failed as a husband. I had failed as a father before I ever began. I looked at my son, sleeping peacefully. I would not let the system take him. Not now. Not after Asiya had given me one last chance to become a man she could be proud of. So I made a decision. I stepped down as CEO. I signed over half my estate into a trust, in his name. And I began the fight, to earn my place. Not as a billionaire, but as a father. Every morning, I showed up. Every court date, I stood tall. I told the truth. I did not hide from my past. And slowly, people began to see. The boy was not just my son. He was my redemption. But just as I thought the world was finally turning, the lawyer handling the will discovered something else. A sealed envelope. Another letter. Written before Asiya passed. Dated 2 days before our divorce. The words inside? They would change everything I thought I knew. About her. About myself. About what truly happened. That night at the hospital. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. The paper was thin. Worn at the edges. Stained in one corner. Was that a tear? Asiya's handwriting flowed across the page. Elegant. Calm. Just like her. "If you are reading this," she began, "then I am no longer there to look into your eyes and tell you the truth." My breath caught in my throat. "The night you brought those divorce papers, I knew you were no longer mine. I saw it in your eyes. Not hatred, not anger, just absence. But I did not sign them because I gave up. I signed because I had no choice." My heart pounded. I could feel the weight of every moment I had dismissed.
Every plea I ignored.
But then her words shifted. That night before you arrived, I was rushed into the emergency room. They said it was complicated. They said I might not make it. My knees weakened. I sat down slowly, afraid of what I would read next. I made a decision. I called your assistant. I told her to bring the divorce papers.
What?
You see, I overheard you that week. The investors were threatening to pull out because of your family drama. They said no one would fund a man dragged down by a pregnant wife in the tabloids. I stared at the page, my mouth dry.
She knew. She heard everything. Every cruel word.
Every cowardly excuse I fed to others.
And yet, she protected me.
I could not let them take your dream from you. Not after everything you survived. So I did what I thought would save you. I divorced you to protect your name. To protect your future. But please, promise me one thing. Do not let our son grow up believing he was unwanted. Tell him he was born of love. Even if it came wrapped in silence. I pressed the letter to my chest. My chest heaved with sobs I had held in for too long. She had sacrificed everything.
Her name. Her dignity. Her last breath. For me.
For a man who never deserved her. I looked at the photo of our son again.
His bright eyes. His innocent smile. And I knew.
I could never fail him the way I failed her.
The next morning, I stood before the judge. Not as a billionaire.
Not as a man seeking redemption.
But as a father.
Carrying a letter written in love.
And sealed in sacrifice.
The judge read the letter in silence.
Then looked at me. You have work to do, she said.
But I believe you have started. She granted me temporary custody.
3 months.
Supervised visits.
Home inspections. I nodded.
I would rebuild from nothing if I had to.
I would trade every dollar.
Every skyscraper with my name. For one more drawing on that orphanage wall. That evening, I picked him up.
He held my hand. No fear. No hesitation.
He looked up at me and asked, "Can we go to where Mama used to walk?"
I froze. Where?
He pointed to a small hill in the distance. She said she would take me there one day.
To watch the stars.
We drove in silence. I carried him on my shoulders. We sat on the grass. Cool wind brushing past us.
He leaned into my chest. Small. Fragile. Whole.
And as the stars came out, one by one, he whispered, "She's up there, isn't she?"
I nodded, unable to speak.
"I think she's watching us,"
he said,
"waiting to see if we can be brave like her."
I pulled him close. I would be brave. For her. For him.
For the man I still hoped to become. But just as peace began to bloom, a black car pulled up at the base of the hill.
A woman stepped out. Stern. Sharp eyes. Holding a file. My lawyer.
She looked up at me and shouted,
"We need to talk. Now."
I placed my son gently on the grass and walked down the hill,
my heart pounding again. I reached her.
She opened the file. "There is more," she said, "and you are not going to like it." I stared at the first page. My blood ran cold. There was a name I had not seen in years. A name I had buried. And it was tied to Asiya's last hospital bill.
It was his name. Zamir Shah.
The man I once called my best friend. The man who stood beside me when I was still selling car parts from the trunk of my rusted hatchback. The man who vanished the same year I made my first million. Taking with him a portion of my startup capital and every ounce of trust one had ever placed in someone.
I clenched the file tighter.
It felt like betrayal all over again. But now, it was tangled with something deeper. How is he connected to this? I asked, my voice raw. My lawyer looked grim. She flipped to the second page.
A hospital invoice.
Dated the night of the delivery.
Emergency care. Paid in full, by Zamir Shah.
I shook my head in disbelief.
No. That cannot be possible. He disappeared. She cut me off. He paid for her C-section.
He was listed as emergency contact. He signed the consent form.
My legs buckled.
I stumbled back, the wind knocked from my chest.
Why? I whispered. Because you were unreachable, she said coldly.
No calls answered.
No messages returned.
And she was bleeding.
I looked up at the stars. They blurred.
I no longer knew if it was from shame or tears.
Zamir had stepped in. When I stepped out, he had been there.
When my son came into this world. When Asiya cried in pain. When she signed those papers, alone. The file was not finished.
There were more pages.
And on the last one, a scanned letter, signed by Asiya. My fingers trembled as I read it. To whom it may concern. In the event of my death, I want it known that Zamir Shah provided nothing but compassion during my most vulnerable moment. He asked for no recognition.
No repayment.
Only that my son live. If this reaches my husband.
I paused. The word stung.
Tell him I never stopped believing he had goodness in him. But sometimes, life has a strange way of showing us who our angels really are.
I dropped the folder.
Suddenly, the years I had spent accumulating wealth felt like dust in my mouth. Zamir had saved my son. Zamir had held her hand when I was chasing power. Zamir had been the man I should have been.
And now, he was gone again.
I looked at my lawyer. Where is he?
I asked. She hesitated, then pulled out a small card.
He runs a free clinic in Lahore now. Asiya funded part of it before she passed.
My breath caught. She never told me.
She never once mentioned Zamir after the divorce. Never used his name to shame me. Never used his actions to prove mine. Because that was not who she was. I turned to look up the hill. My son was lying on his back.
Arms spread wide.
Counting stars with his fingers. I had no idea how to tell him any of this. But I knew one thing. If I wanted to become the father he deserved, the man Asiya believed still lived inside me, I would need to face the past. Find Zamir.
Thank him. Apologize.
And finally ask the question that had haunted me since that night. Why did he disappear? And what had Asiya truly asked him to protect? Because something still felt unfinished. Something about her death, about the silence surrounding it, was too carefully folded. And I was about to unfold the truth. The next morning, I stood at the edge of a dusty street in Lahore. Heat shimmered off the pavement. The scent of chai and diesel clung to the air. Children chased a punctured football past motorbikes and beggars. Vendors shouted beneath tangled wires.
It was chaos. Alive, human, real.
And there, at the end of the narrow alley, was a pale blue sign. Asiya Free Clinic. Established, 2022.
My chest tightened.
Seeing her name there. Not on a grave, but on a building of healing. It did something to me.
I stepped inside.
The smell of antiseptic met me. Modest benches lined the walls. Barefoot mothers rocked feverish children. A nurse scribbled names in a worn ledger.
She glanced up.
You need medicine? She asked kindly.
No, I said, voice low. I need Zamir Shah. She paused.
Her eyes scanned my face longer than necessary.
Then she nodded. One moment.
I waited by a rusted water cooler. Every second stretched.
My heartbeat thundered. What if he hated me?
What if he blamed me for everything?
I had no defense. Only guilt. And a need to know the truth.
Minutes later, a man appeared from behind a curtain.
Slim. Bearded. Eyes sharp but calm.
His white coat was stained with ink and time. He froze when he saw me.
Silence.
10 years collapsed between us.
He walked closer. No smile.
No fury.
Just silence.
Finally, he spoke. You are taller, he said quietly. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding.
You are braver, I said back. He studied me.
Not with anger, but with a kind of sadness. You came to punch me, he asked flatly. Or to say thank you?
Neither, I said.
I came to ask you what really happened.
He looked away,
Then turned and gestured for me to follow. We entered a back room.
sparse. A desk, a prayer mat,
A single photo on the wall. Asiya, holding a newborn, smiling.
My legs gave out.
I sat in the chair across from him. He poured water into a steel cup, handed it to me, then said, She called me 2 hours before delivery. She said she had no one else. I dropped everything, he added. I ran there like a madman.
I thought. His voice faltered.
I thought maybe this was the moment I could make up for the mistake I made.
I looked at him, confused. What mistake? He rubbed his face.
Years ago, when you two first married, she came to me for advice.
She was worried.
You were obsessed with building the company.
Sometimes cruel, distant.
I told her to leave you.
My stomach twisted. She cried.
Said you were just scared. That you needed time. But I told her, love should not hurt like that. And then, I did something worse.
He looked up at me now.
I told her if she left you, I would marry her myself.
My head reeled.
But she said no. She said you were her path, her test, her truth. She said, Zamir, love is not about who makes you smile when it is easy. It is about who you carry when they cannot carry themselves.
He exhaled.
That night at the hospital, she was in agony.
Terrified.
Still defending you. She made me promise one thing.
I leaned in. What was it?
His eyes met mine. She said, if anything happens to me, do not tell him everything.
Not yet.
Only when he is ready.
I felt the room spin. What did she mean? He opened a drawer.
Pulled out a small, sealed envelope. She wrote this 2 days before she passed. I never read it. She said it was only for you. For when you found your way back. He placed it in my hands.
It was light.
But it burned through my palms. I stared at it.
Afraid to open it.
Afraid of what I might learn. He placed a hand on my shoulder. She loved you until her last breath, he whispered. But she also loved truth. And I think it is time you knew it.
I stood up, letter in hand, heart pounding.
Behind me, Zamir spoke one last thing. A sentence that shook me to my core. She was going to name him after me.
I turned. He smiled bittersweet. But I told her,
call him Rafri. It means elevation.
She said,
that is what he would do for you one day. Raise you from the ruins you buried yourself in. I stepped out into the Lahore sun. The envelope still unopened. My son waiting back home. And a truth sealed in the ink of a woman. Who had carried all of us. Even as she was fading. I sat alone in my hotel room that night.
Curtains drawn.
City lights blinking behind glass like silent warnings. The envelope lay before me. It felt heavier now. Not with weight,
but with consequence.
I ran my thumb along the edge.
It had her scent.
Rosewater and quiet strength.
For a moment, I closed my eyes.
I could almost hear her voice again. If anything happens to me, tell him only when he is ready.
Was I ready?
I had lost everything once. Then buried it under towers of steel and ambition. But this
was different.
This was not business. This was her final truth.
I opened it. Inside, a single sheet. Folded carefully.
Her handwriting flowed like a lullaby.
My love. My chest tightened.
She had not written my ex-husband. Not the man who left me. She had written my love. If you are reading this, it means Zamir believed you had come back to yourself. And if he believes that, then so do I. Tears welled in my eyes.
I read on.
There is something I never told you. Something I kept buried, because I did not want you to carry more shame. That night, the one you remember as the night I signed those papers. It was not just labor that nearly took my life.
I sat up straight.
My hands gripped the letter. It was poisoning. I was given something, by someone I trusted.
My blood froze.
At first, the doctors thought it was an allergic reaction. But the truth came later. Someone wanted to hurt me. Or perhaps hurt you through me.
I read faster.
They never found the proof.
Only suspicions.
But I have my doubts. And I beg you, for our son's sake, do not seek revenge.
Seek truth.
And protect him from the darkness that once lived around us.
My heart thundered. Poison?
Who would do such a thing?
Who would harm Asiya?
And why? I turned the letter over.
There was a final line.
One that felt like a whisper in the silence. You always believed your power was in what you built. But your true power was always in how you chose to love. Choose wisely now.
Asiya.
The letter slipped from my hands. I sat in the quiet.
Haunted. She had known. All this time.
She had died knowing someone tried to kill her.
And she still protected them.
By saying nothing. By letting me believe it was fate.
But it was not fate. It was a person. A betrayal. And now,
I needed to know who.
Not for revenge. But for Rofri.
Because if that darkness still existed, if that person still walked free,
then my son was not safe.
Suddenly, I remembered something. The investor meeting. The ones who pressured me to distance myself from Asiya.
There had been one man. Older. Sharp.
Always too curious about my personal life.
Mr. Kamal. A silent partner. But always present.
Always pulling strings. He had wanted control.
He had said,
family weakens the brand.
My fists clenched. I picked up my phone.
Dialed my lawyer. I need everything you can find on Kamal Nadim, I said.
Hospital logs.
Financial records. Connections to Asiya.
There was a pause.
I was just about to call you, she said, voice tense.
Why?
We found something, she replied.
What? She hesitated.
There is an offshore account that made a hospital payment the night of Asiya's labor.
My blood turned to ice. She continued.
It was traced back to a shell company, one that links directly to Kamal.
I stood up. The room tilted. She added.
And the medication administered to Asiya that night, it was not standard protocol.
I did not respond.
My world once again
was splitting open. But this time, I would not run. This time,
I would protect my son, uncover the truth, and finally bring light to the shadows Asiya died shielding us from, even if it meant burning the empire I built.
To the ground.
The sun was rising as I stood in front of the boardroom window. The skyline glowed gold. The very towers I once worshipped, now just steel and silence. I had done what I vowed to do.
I exposed Kamal. The truth.
Buried beneath bribes, false signatures, and offshore shadows, was finally brought to light. He was arrested. Not just for what he did to Asiya, but for laundering money, manipulating shareholders, and attempting to seize my company through deceit.
It made headlines.
People applauded me for courage. But it did not feel like victory. Because real courage? That belonged to Asiya. I visited her grave that evening. Rofri held my hand. He placed a small bouquet of white jasmine at her headstone. He looked up at me and asked, "Is Mama happy now?" I smiled through tears.
"Yes," I whispered. "She is free now."
"And proud of you."
He beamed.
I knelt down and placed a letter on the soil.
Not her letter. Mine. For her. My love, I had written.
I failed you in life, but I will honor you in legacy. Your strength lives on in our son. He dreams bigger than I ever could.
He is kind, gentle, curious, brave.
He is your reflection, and my redemption. You taught me that wealth means nothing without wisdom. That success means nothing without love. And that power is not in conquering the world, but in protecting those who make your world worth living.
I stood slowly,
And as we walked back to the car, Rafi tugged my arm.
Baba, he said.
When I grow up, I want to build a hospital.
I stopped.
What kind of hospital? One where no one gets left alone, he said, no matter how poor they are.
I bent down, held him tight.
And in that moment, I knew.
Asiya had already won. Through him. Through us.
Through every broken piece made whole again.
Moral lesson.
True success is not measured by wealth, but by the hearts we uplift along the way.
Power fades. Titles fall. But kindness.
Kindness echoes across generations. Let us not wait until it is too late to honor those who stood by us in silence. Forgive deeply. Love openly. Protect fiercely. And never forget. The strongest legacies are built not in glass towers, but in the quiet, unseen sacrifices of love. Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story. If it moved you, share it, comment below, and let someone know. You are never alone.